Buongiorno. Hello, I'm Marci Shimoff, and I am so happy to be joining you all. I am here in Rome, Italy, and I'm attending the World Summit of the Nobel Peace Laureates. I was originally supposed to be with all of you in Toronto at Raymond's wonderful invitation, but I have also been invited to join the Nobel Peace Prize winners at this wonderful World Summit for Peace. And so in this way I get to do both. I want to share with you today some of the amazing things that I've heard already at this conference. Amongst the 15 Nobel Peace Prize winners who are here are His Holiness the Dalai Lama and a number of the Women Peace Prize winners, including Mairead Maguire from Ireland, Northern Ireland, who helped in 1976, helped the conflicts in Northern Ireland. Jody Williams from the United States, who banned the landmines, and her wonderful work there in 1997 was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, amongst many, many other people. And I am going to share with you today some of what they have spoken, as well as some very specific things that we all can do to become happier, to raise our happiness level. That's been my work over the last 10 years, and I'm very excited to share with you some tips in the short time that we have together. So before I tell you what His Holiness the Dalai Lama said today that's very much in sync with my message, I just want you to know that I am really with you all in spirit at the Women in Power Conference. I can feel you, and I hope you can feel me, and I carry you with me here. So I'm going to start by asking you all a question. Now, I can't see your hands, but I'm going to trust that you're still going to raise up your arms if the answer is yes, okay? Is that a deal? So my first question is, how many of you would like to be happier? Let me just see a show of hands. Now, if you're like every other audience that I asked that question of around the world, 99% of you raised your hands. Of course, we all want to be happier. Aristotle said that happiness was the goal of all goals. It's the be-all and end-all of life. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says to themselves, gee, what could I do today to be really miserable? But we have some bad news about happiness. We also have some good news, but I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that 1 out of 4 women in North America is on antidepressants. We have an epidemic of unhappiness. But here's the good news. The good news is that science has cracked the happiness code. Science actually knows what it takes for us to be happier. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that should be headline news. So what I want to do is I want to share with you some of that science about what we can do to be happier and some practical things that you can take away today to become happier in your life. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you how that relates to this concept here at the conference that we have, peace, living it. Because I believe that peace really starts with each of us being happier inside. In fact, that was something that His Holiness the Dalai Lama shared with us this morning at the conference. He was asked about world peace, and he said, really, peace starts right here and right here. Peace starts in our own heads and in our own hearts, and it starts through the development of more positive emotions. So let me just tell you a little bit about the research on happiness. I'll share with you one research piece that I think is really important for all of us to know, and that is that we all have something called a happiness set point. And it's like a thermostat setting. And what that means is that no matter what happens to us, whether it's good or bad, we will tend to return to our happiness set point unless we do something to change it. So for example, people who win the lottery, within about a year, the first couple months, they are happier. I won the lottery. But within a year, they've returned to their original happiness set point. And quite surprisingly, the same is true of people who have tragedies happen. Generally, within about a year, they've returned to their original happiness set point. And here's how the set point is determined. It's 50% genetic. It's in your DNA. It's only 10% your circumstance. It's such a small piece of the pie, and yet that's what so many people are trying to change to be happier. The other 40% is your habits of thoughts and behavior. And that's the piece we can really focus on to raise our happiness set point. Now, I'll take it a step farther and say that there are some progressive scientists in the field of epigenetics, like Dr. Bruce Lipton, who say that even that 50% piece that's our DNA, our genes, that also can be changed or influenced by changing our habits, which says that up to 90% of our happiness set point can be influenced by our habits. Now, what I've seen is that the only difference between deeply happy people and everybody else is that they have different habits. So let me share a couple of them with you. And I just have to keep referencing His Holiness the Dalai Lama because he is such an embodiment of what it is that we are talking about. We're an embodiment of happiness, an embodiment of peace, and an embodiment of greatness. You know, I deeply believe that we all, every single one of us, has greatness inside of us. And when we raise our happiness set point, we're able to access that greatness even more. So when people ask me what I mean by being happy for no reason, let me just tell you what I mean. I don't mean that everything works out perfectly in your life. What I mean is that no matter what's happening, you have an inner backdrop of peace and well-being that allows you to get through any kind of circumstance. So I say that when you're happy for no reason, you aren't trying to extract your happiness from your circumstances, but you're bringing your happiness to your circumstances. So here's one of the happiness habits that people who are deeply happy have. They have an ability to lean into and savor the positive in life. We all have things good and bad that happen to us, but happier people are able to really recognize and acknowledge the good. They have a positive mindset. They have an open heart. And I want to share with you a story of someone who I think is a great example of this attitude of having what I call a kind mind. Research is showing that we all have neural pathways in the brain, and most of us have neural pathways that lean us towards the negative. But happier people have created new neural pathways that lean us towards the positive, towards what I call having a kind mind. So let me share with you a story about a man named Roger Crawford. This is I co-authored a number of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I'm with Raymond and the family of Chicken Soup for the Soul co-authors. And this is a wonderful story from one of the earlier Chicken Soup for the Soul books about a man named Roger Crawford. And Roger was born without any hands. He had just one thumb coming out of one arm and a thumb and a forefinger coming out of the other arm. Now what Roger also had was a badly crippled left leg that had to be amputated from the knee down when he was just 5 years old. So Roger grew up on an artificial leg. And the leg kept getting changed out as he grew taller and taller. Now these aren't great circumstances, but his parents were very wise, and they taught him that it wasn't his circumstances in life that would affect his overall happiness and success, but rather it was his attitude, his mind, his heart, his thoughts. In the 8th grade, Roger's mother noticed that all of Roger's pant pockets were worn out. Now, why were his pant pockets worn out? Well, they were worn out because he was hiding his hands, of course. So what did his mother do? She sewed them shut. She said, honey, God gave you these hands. I want you to be proud of who you are, and I want you to show yourself to the whole world. Well, with that attitude, the next year in the 9th grade, Roger decided to try out for the football team. He miraculously made the football team. So he set a goal for himself to get one touchdown during one game of the season. The final game of the season came and he hadn't gotten his touchdown yet, so he went into that game with full focus and attention on getting that touchdown. Halfway through the game, the quarterback sent the ball flying accidentally in Roger's direction. But Roger seized the opportunity. He ran as fast as he could after that ball. He put out his arms, he caught that ball, and he continued running so fast that he made it to his 9-yard line before his opponent caught up with him by doing a shoestring tackle, which is when your opponent dives and grabs you by the ankle. And in this case, his opponent dove and grabbed him by his left ankle, the ankle of his artificial leg. Well, this is how Roger tells the story. He says, I pulled, he pulled, I pulled, he pulled, I pulled, he pulled. I won. There he stood with my leg in his hand. But there I stood with the football still in my arms on one leg. Now, what did I have to do to get a touchdown? Hop my way across the other 9 yards. That's what I did. The referee went like, that touchdown. And I got that touchdown I so yearned for. He said, but better than those 6 points was turning around and looking at the guy's expression who was standing in the middle of the field, holding my leg. Well, that was Roger Crawford then, and let me tell you that today Roger Crawford is the first physically challenged person to have made the U.S. tennis professional team. He is a touring tennis pro. Now, what is so inspiring about Roger's story is, I just want to share with you actually the last paragraph of his story as it appears in Chicken Soup for the Soul, because I think it's very telling. He says, the only difference between you and me is that you can see my handicap, but I can't see yours. We all have them. He said, when people ask me how I've been able to overcome my handicap, I tell them that I haven't overcome anything. I've simply learned the things in life I can't do. Things like play the piano or eat food with chopsticks. He says, but more important, I've learned what I can do. And I do that with all my heart and all my soul. And I think, wow, here's a guy who has less going for him than many of us do, but he's living his life with all his heart and all his soul. My invitation to all of us is, no matter what our challenges are, and we all have them, but like Roger, to live our lives with all our heart and all our soul. That's really living. And believe me, that's what I'm seeing here with these amazing Nobel Peace Laureates. They have challenges beyond challenges. We have Lema Gabawi here, who is from Liberia, and she helped free the people of Liberia. Challenge after challenge, but living her life with all her heart and all her soul. And that is what we all can do. Now, all of this boils down to something called our self-talk. Now, how many have talked to yourselves during the day? Let me just see a show of hands here. Okay, those of you who aren't raising your hands are saying to myself, I don't know, do I talk to myself during the day? Maybe I do. We all talk to ourselves all day long. They are called thoughts. The average person has 60,000 thoughts a day. And for the average person, 80% of those are negative. We actually inherited this. It's called the negativity bias. We inherited it from our caveman ancestors who had to remember those negatives so much, but we no longer need that. It's very outdated, and it really messes us up, to be honest. Because when we have so many negative thoughts, we've created neural pathways in the brain that allow us to only notice what's negative out there. We see what we're used to seeing. So what happy people have done is they have employed leaning into more positive thoughts, savoring more positive thoughts, creating more neural pathways in the brain. The power of our brain is immense. The power of our heart is immense. And I wish I had more time to share with you many of the tools and techniques and strategies and research all about it. I have so little time with you. But I do want to share with you a little exercise to show you the power of your mind, and then 3 steps that I want you to take to reprogram, to develop new neural pathways in your brain that will raise your happiness set point. But first, the little exercise, the little demonstration. I learned this from a colleague of mine and Raymond's named Chun Yi Lin. He is a Qigong master. And it's a wonderful little exercise. I'd like you to take the crease that's at the very top of your wrist, the very bottom of your palm. There's one crease that's the one right at the bottom of your palm, top of your wrist. And I'd like you to line it up with the one on your other hand. Do this as though you're doing a very scientific experiment. Make sure they're lined up properly. And then put your hands together. And you'll notice probably one hand is a little longer than the other. One hand has long, the fingers are extending further. I'd like you to take the hand with the shorter hand and place it in front of you. Now, if they were both the same, you can take either hand and put it in front of you. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk to this hand. Now, it's going to seem very strange, but play along with me here. So we're going to tell this hand to grow, and we're going to do it very lovingly. So I'd like you out loud all together to maybe 8 or 9 times. Just tell your hand to grow. And as you're doing it, send your hand love and visualize your hand growing. Okay? Here we go. Grow, grow, grow. Beautiful hand. Grow. I see you growing, hand. Grow, grow, grow. Wonderful hand. Grow. Okay, now, you sent it love, you saw it growing. Now again, place those two creases right next to each other and extend your hands together and see what happens. Did it work? Usually about 90-95% of the room that works for. That's how powerful your mind is. Now I sometimes, after doing this experiment, I will get men in the room saying, does that work on other body parts? It's up to you to test out. I'm not gonna make any comment there. But what I do want to point out is how deeply, deeply powerful our thoughts, our minds are, and our hearts. And so there are three things that we've learned from the scientists, researchers, about how we can create more positive neural pathways in the brain. So here's number one. Number one is you've got to notice the positives. You've got to be on the lookout for it. Yeah, there's a lot of bad things that happen, but I want you to actually be looking out for the positives. One of the women that I interviewed for my book, Happy for No Reason, says she acts like she's the Academy Awards committee, and she pretends every day that she's going out to give Academy Awards. So she sees a cute little fluffy white dog walking down the street, and she gives it the Academy Award for being the cutest dog of the day. So just be on the lookout for the positive. Point number two, it takes 20 seconds for us to register the positives enough that it will create a shift in the brain. Nowhere near as long as it takes us to register the negatives. So put your attention on it for at least 20 seconds. This, by the way, is why the gratitude process, why thinking of 5 things at the end of every day that you're grateful for will, within 30 days, raise your happiness set point, because it's forcing you to put your attention on it for longer than 20 seconds. And then the third thing is to go for the 3-to-1 ratio. Now the 3-to-1 ratio means 3 positives for every 1 negative. So that means every time you've got something that comes up that's negative, I want you to introduce 3 positives in its place. So just try those, practice them for the next couple weeks. Use your own life as an experiment and see what happens. So that's my short version of some tips for you from Rome here today. And I just want to also share with you, I was listening just right before we spoke with Mairead McGuire, the amazing woman, just amazing woman from Northern Ireland who was the Nobel Peace Prize winner, helping create more peace in Northern Ireland back in the 70s. And she was asked about peace. And she said, you know, peace is deeply our birthright. It is what we are all deserve here. And it's up to each one of us to create peace in our own lives, peace in our own minds, peace in our own hearts. Very similar to the message that His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave this morning as well. I always am asked if it's selfish to want to be happier. And I answer it like this. It's the least selfish thing that you can possibly do. Because when you're happier, when you have greater peace in your heart and in your mind, you are doing the most that you can do to help create peace here on this planet of ours. So I leave you with a Chinese proverb that sums all of that up. And it goes like this. When there is light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. When there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. When there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. And when there is order in the nation, there will be peace in this world. My prayer and my wish for every single one of us is that we experience that light in our own souls, and that together we help create more peace here on this planet of ours. Thank you. It was a great blessing to get to be with you. I send you my love.